Hello, and welcome back to the Ninox Learning Channel. My name is Andy Marks. I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer at Nioxus Corporation. And in this class, we're going to address a topic that has a dramatic impact on your user experience or user interface design and the entire look and operation of the Ninox system. We're going to talk about building control panels. Now, the best way to describe a control panel is to show it in action. So let me show you what we're going to be doing. I've built a very simple database. We have a company table, and I've created the Acme Car Company. And we have an embedded child table, which is the employees table. These are the employees that work at the company. Now, if I want to add a new employee, I click on the small plus sign right here. It slides in a new screen, and I can give the employee a number, a name, note their hire date, and what department they've been hired into, and whether or not they've completed their training. I close the window, and the new record appears. If I want to add another record, once again, I can click on the plus sign. Multiple records can be entered by clicking on this plus sign here, or I can duplicate an existing record, or of course, throw away the record that appears on screen. The point is, the standard Ninox user experience is the screens, the forms, sliding in and layering on top of each other from the right-hand side of the screen. For some people, having those screens layered on top of each other and having them sliding back and forth creates a somewhat cluttered or at times confusing user experience. This is where a control panel can be very helpful. Let me show you the exact same operation, this time using the control panel that we've built instead of the standard slide where Ninox is bringing in another screen from the right. I'm just going to flip over to the control panel. And you see that we have, again, here's our embedded view of the employees table. But this time I'm going to add the employee in these fields here. And we'll get Mr. Rolls. We'll note his hire date. He was hired into production. And now by clicking this plus sign, we confirm, yes, we want to add the new employee. And there's the record added right there to the bottom of the screen. In this case, in this situation with the control panel, we did everything on one screen without a second screen layering on top and sliding in and out right to left. These control panel setups, or this design, sometimes makes it easier, creates a more streamlined or simplified user experience because everything is happening on one screen. There are a couple of other advantages, one of which is in the standard sliding user interface, you create new records by clicking on this, what some people would say is a very small plus sign. In the control panel, we use a view instead of an embedded child record display. And we have a much bigger plus sign. This is, in fact, a button. So for those of you that want to remove that plus sign on the right, or at least give yourself a slightly larger target to hit, the control panel is going to solve that problem for you. Building a control panel couldn't be simpler, so let's dive right in and let's see how we've done this. A lot of people like to know how we've constructed the database, and in looking at the data model, you can see this is a very, very simple architecture. We have the parent company table, we have a second table, the employees table, which is the child of the parent. That's it. I will tell you though, this works in any environment, in any architecture. You can set up a control panel to put data into multiple tables, some of which may be children of the parent you're working in. Some of them may be related, but in a different family or stack. And in fact, you could use this design, this control panel concept, to enter multiple pieces of content into multiple tables, some of which don't even have to be related. And we're going to look at that at the very end before we adjourn this class. So stick with us till the very end and we'll show you a couple of ways you can extend and expand this control panel concept. But for now, let's look at how it's built. Again, it couldn't be easier. We're going to go in, and again, let's look at the slide, the default design for Ninox. We have a child table. Ninox has automatically placed a multi-record listing, a line-by-line listing of all of the child records associated with this parent right here on the parent screen. What we're going to do with our control panel is, first, we hid this employees table, and you can see here, this is just a switch we built to switch back and forth between the standard design and the control panel. And you can see here that all we did was note that when the switch is set to 1, which in this case is standard, we see the embedded child table. And when we move over to the control panel and the switch is set to 2, we see this embedded view. For each employee record, there are 5 fields: employee number, name, hire date, department, and this yes/no checkbox indicating whether or not they have completed their new employee training. The first step to building your data entry control panel is to duplicate all of the fields in the table that is going to receive the new record. Duplicate those fields right here on the current form. I am in administrative mode, and I have created or duplicated those 5 fields: employee number, name, hire date, and department. And the 5th field, the yes/no, did this new employee complete their new employee training? We then add the button that has all the magic to it, and that is the plus button, or the add new record button. This is where we tell Ninox how to take the content that is here and put it in there. Let's see this in operation one more time and then look at the code behind it. We create an employee by giving him a number, a name, a hire date, the department, and we can click yes or no if they completed their training, and then hit the plus sign. When we hit the plus sign, it asks us to confirm, do you want to add the new employee? I can say no, and it brings me right back to the screen and nothing happens at all. Or I can confirm my desire to add the employee by clicking yes, and there you have it. The new employee, in this case Henry Royce, is added right below the record for his partner, Charles Rolls. How did this happen? Let's look at the plus sign that has the code that enables our control panel to work. It's really a pretty simple design. The first thing we do is we ask the question, using the dialog function, do you want to add a new employee? The options are yes or no, and whichever one we pick, and we can only pick one, will be assigned to the variable x. If x equals yes, which means we answered the question, yes, we do want to add the new employee, these lines of code will be executed. If we select no, these lines of code are skipped, it goes straight to the end, and nothing at all happens. Let's assume we clicked yes. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to capture the data that goes into the new record in variables. You will notice we're not taking the value of the employee number field, and that is this field right here on the screen. We're not simply taking it from this field and putting it into the employee number field of the new record. We're taking the content of the employee number field and putting it into a variable, a temporary holding spot. Then, after we've created the new record, we then use those variables, the new employee number, the new employee name, the new employee's hire date, and those variables that are temporarily holding the content for the new record, they serve as the source of the content when the record is actually created. So the first step is to collect all of your content in a variable. Next, we have to actually create the record, and that's what we see happening right here on line 9. we define into existence a variable, in this case named I. The variable name can be anything you want. I is going to contain a pointer. That pointer is pointing to the result of this function, the result of the creation of a new record in the employees table. So this is basically pointing to a new record in the employee table, and this is the record where we want to put the content of those duplicate fields that appeared on the form, the screen, underneath the view. So if I is pointing to the newly created record, I.employee number is pointing to the employee number field of the newly created record. And that is going to receive the value being held in the variable X new number. And that value is the value we entered as the employee number for the new employee. We continue with this same methodology. The pointer I, the field name name, receives the name of the new employee. The hire date field in this newly created record, which is being pointed to with the variable I, that's where we put our hire date. We then drop in our department and the completed training, yes or no, for the checkbox. And then finally, we come to line 15. This is the mistake most people make because they forget about it. This is what I'm talking about. When we go in and we look at an employee record, we see 5 fields. Employee number, name, hire date, department, yes or no, did they complete their new employee training? There is a 6th and very important field, which is the field that effectively connects this child record back to this parent. It's not enough when we click the plus button that we create the child record. We have to tell Ninox how to link or where to link this child. What company is this employee an employee of? So that's why this line of code here is so critically important. We have created a variable called X current record, or X capital C-U-R-R capital R-E-C. That's the standard I use when I'm building databases. Of course, you can use any variable you want to use. But this variable contains the ID of the current record that we're looking at. Let me show you what I mean. We are looking at this record for the Acme Car Company. The variable X current record is going to receive the unique Ninox assigned ID number of this company record. Then what we're going to do is we are going to take that value, the ID of the current record that appears on screen, in this case the company record, and we are going to plug it into or populate it into the company field in the newly created record that is being pointed to with the variable I. Let me show this to you one more way, and I think it'll make perfect sense. When you look at the employee screen, there are 5 fields. But when you look at the employee data model, there are 6 fields. The 6th field is this field right here that is the pointer, the connection from the employee child to the company parent. This 6th field, or this reference field, does not actually appear on the screen. And this is why a lot of people forget to include it in the code block. If you forget it in the code block, this is what you get. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take line 15 and enclose the entire contents of that line in double quotation marks, turning it into a comment. This is no longer an executable line of code. It's simply text, which now appears in red, which is explaining something. All right. What I've effectively done is use the quotation marks to leave the code in the code block, leave line 15 where it is, but render it ignored. It does not get executed in terms of the code block itself. So let's pretend we forgot that sixth field, that field that didn't appear on the screen. I'll save my changes and exit administrative mode. We will create a new employee, Ferruccio Lamborghini, and we'll note his hire date. He went into the sales group, and we click the plus sign. Yes, I want to add the employee, and nothing. It looks like it didn't work. It worked, just not all the way. If we go into the employees table, we can see right here that Ferruccio Lamborghini was indeed added. The problem was this child was not linked back to its parent because we pretended, but we forgot this crucial line of code, line 15. When creating a control panel, when asking Ninox to create subordinate or linked records that are linked to other records, in this case, a child record linked back to the parent, you must tell Ninox through code not only what the content of the record is, but what is the relationship between the record being created and the record to which it's related. Let's continue. Again, to remind you, step 1, we captured the new record data in variables. Step 2, we created the new record. Step 3, we populated the information from the variables into the actual fields of the new record. And then the last thing we did in that step, we linked the newly created child record back to the parent. Now I want you to look real quickly at how this function operates. I'll create one more employee. And let's go with an American car hero, Edsel Ford, noting the hire date, the department, and I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign. But watch what happens to these fields right here. And we'll go ahead and say he completed his employee education. I click the plus field. I confirm that I want to add the employee. Edsel Ford is added at the bottom of the list, and you will then see that all of these fields got cleared out. They got emptied out, so I now can go in and add the next record. Edsel Ford isn't appearing on the screen. What happened? Again, remember, if you don't establish the relationship between the new record and the record of the table it's related to, which is what is happening here in line 15, it will look like it didn't work. Let's try that again. I'm going to go back into the child. Here's the Edsel Ford record that was created. I'm going to go ahead and delete that record, and we're going to add Mr. Ford again. Back into the company table, and once again, a number, a name, a hire date in a department. Yes, he completed the training, but now that I have taken away those quotation marks, and now that that important line 15 is there to establish the relationship, when we click the plus sign and we confirm, yes, we want to add the new employee, there he is, right at the bottom of the screen, right there, Edsel Ford. And all of these fields have been cleared out, making room for the next employee that we want to add. And that is the final step in the code to execute or design this control panel. Remember all these fields that were on screen, and we temporarily captured their values in these variables. Then we used those variables to populate the fields in the new record. That was the record created here on line 9 that was being pointed to by the variable I. We linked the child to the parent on the all-important line 15, and then the last step is we went back to the actual fields and wiped them out. We eliminated the content that was there by saying these fields are now null or contain no content whatsoever, effectively blanking those fields out, thereby setting the system up, the control panel, setting it up for us to enter the very next record. One more thing I want to point out, and that is a question we get a lot here at Nioxus, and that is the complete training. This is actually a yes/no checkbox. We can go in and look at the record, and this is the field, have we completed our training? We just do something here that I think gives it a little more of a visual, more interesting look, and that is when we are setting up our embedded views, and you can do this on an embedded view or on an embedded multi-record child insert. When we go in and edit the columns, we in fact created a formula for the field, did they complete their training? I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the one that's there and show you how we do it. We grab a formula, put it at the very end, and name this completed training. Yes or no, did they complete their training? But I want to have a visual indicator, yes or no, as opposed to a textual letter alphabetic yes or no. So we use a very simple formula. If they completed their training, then display the green check mark icon. If they didn't, or else, display the red X icon, and that is all there is to it. Now, for purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and put the completed training record right there next to it, so we can see both of them. When the value is yes, we see the icon green check mark. If it is not yes, which means it's no or blank, we get the red X. It's your choice if you want to use this type of display to show in text values yes or no, or this type of display where we can display in iconic or icon graphic values yes or no. You have a number of options. You see here that we used one option, and that is to start the entire code block by asking the question, do you want to add this employee? This gives us an escape route. So if we were to click this button by accident, having not filled in any of the fields, I don't want to create a blank record, so I click no, brings me right back to the screen where I was, and no blank records, nothing has been changed, no problems have been created. There's lots of things you can do with dialog boxes, with alert boxes, that allow you to give the user a little more control over the user experience and the entry, modification, viewing, or deletion of data. So this is a basic, simple control panel. As I mentioned, you can get really fancy with these. For example, let's say that we have not only our company table and the employee child table, let's create one more table called employee dependents. The dependent will have a name and some relationship to the employee. That relationship might be spouse, or might be a child, or a member of the extended family. What we then want to do is go in and in the dependent table, I forgot to do one thing, and that is, of course, build the relationship between the dependent and the employee. And the dependent table is a child or composition table of the employee. So now we have the proper data model, and it looks like that. One family, one stack, 3 members in the family. The parent, company, the parent's child, employees, and the child's child, which is the parent's grandchild, employee dependents. I want to be able to indicate whether or not an employee has dependents when entering the employee through the company control panel. Two different tables. What does that look like? Very simple. We just have to add a couple more fields. Here's the employee table. Here is the employee dependents embedded child table. The fields that I want to display are the name and the relationship. So we have that information right there. Then what we do is we add a couple of more fields back to our control panel. We're going to have a field, in this case a text field, and I'm going to use a space to force my new text field down to the second line. This is going to be the employee dependent name, and we need that choice field to show the dependent relationship, and that is going to be 1 spouse, 2 child, and finally a member of the extended family, a cousin, an in-law, something like that. We then have to make a quick modification to the code here. We've got 2 new fields. We need 2 new variables. I'm going to add those and say let new dependent name equal the employee dependent name field, and let new dependent relationship equal the value there. However, this content, these 2 lines of content, are not going to be added to the child table because they're not an employee of the company. They're a dependent of the employee. They are a grandchild record to the company table. We follow the same process. Step 1, create the new record. I'm going to give myself a couple of blank lines here. And we're going to say let, and I'll use the variable letter D for dependent, equal create. And then we are going to say that the field in the newly created record being pointed to by D, the field called dependent name, is going to be equal to the value of this variable here, new employee dependent name, X new dependent name. This points out something I want to make sure we haven't talked about this for a while, and it's a mistake that's easy to make. We spelled it right, XNEWDEPNAME. But notice that this variable, X new dependent name, has a capital N. Case matters. This variable is not the same as that variable, and that's why we're getting the field not found error. I will go ahead and make that a capital, and our error will go away. The name field is going to equal the new employee name. The relationship field is going to equal new dependent relationship, new dependent relationship. And as we did here in line 17, where we created the relationship between the child and the parent, we need to do the same thing here. This newly created record, the record created on line 19, is a child of this employee parent, making it a grandchild of the current parent of the entire table or stack, the company table. The newly created employee record is being referred to in the variable I. Therefore, the field in the newly created employee dependents table called employee is going to equal I. The dependent points back to the parent employee record, that it is the dependent of. So with these simple lines of code, we now can create a child to one parent, a grandchild to the parent. So again, we simply clean up the empty spaces. I just put those in there so you can see the new lines of code. We've created a couple new variables to capture the dependent information. After creating the employee record, we then created the employee dependent record. And in this all-important line 21, we linked the new employee dependent record, which is being pointed to with the variable D, back to its parent, which is the new employee record, which was created here and is being pointed to using the variable I. 2 more lines and we're done. Before we complete the process, let's go to the employee dependent name field and clear that out. And finally, the dependent relationship field is going to be null. And there we go. Let's see if it works. I'm going to create a new employee, and this is going to be Ettore Bugatti. We note his hire date, and he was in production. He completed his new employee training, and he has a son. His son was Jean Bugatti, and the relationship, this was his child. We click the plus sign, confirm yes, we want to add the new employee. The new employee is added. There's Ettore Bugatti right at the top. The fields on our control panel were cleaned out. And when we go look at Ettore Bugatti, look at that. There is his son, Jean Bugatti, his child, in the employee dependence table. What we were able to do was enter data, create records, and complete the fields in those records into 2 separate tables without having to slide in one record and then slide in another record. So we had 3 forms stacked on top of each other. We were able to simply create all of the data for all of the records, the employee and the employee dependent records. All of the data went in here, and with one single hit or click of the plus button, the employee was created, Ettore Bugatti, and the employee's dependent was also created. Now, whether or not these 2 tables were parent-child, or 2 tables and 2 stacks that were linked through an external link, or maybe not even linked at all, you can put all of the fields you need to capture all of the data you need on any form, making it a control panel, and putting in the control, in this case, the plus sign, which takes all of the data and puts it in the proper place. These 4 fields got put into the employee record. These 2 fields got put into the employee dependent record. Both of those records were created automatically when we clicked the single button. So what normally would take 1 screen, 2 screen, 3 screens, and 3 clicks of the mouse at minimum, we got done with 1 screen and 1 click of the mouse. A much more streamlined user experience, a lot less coming and going and sliding in and out, which sometimes can confuse new users. And what I believe to be a simpler, easier, more intuitive user experience and user interface design. And that is a control panel. Think about all the different ways you can use control panels. How many times have you had to enter records into multiple tables because of one event or transaction? You go to the first table, you enter the data. You click on the child record, you enter the child data. You go over to the table that's linked to the child, and you enter more data in there. Lots of clicking, lots of moving the hand on the keyboard to the mouse and back to the keyboard. And honestly, What could have been done in one screen with one click in seconds starts to require multiple screens, lots of clicking, in a couple of minutes. And that added time does add up. This is a more efficient way. Control panels allow you to do everything on one screen, on one form, with one single click of the mouse. We eliminated the plus button here, the plus button that appeared at the top of the child table embed, because views, and as we can see here, this is a view. It is a view of the selection of employees that work for this company. We eliminated the plus sign, replaced it with this plus button, and we're able to lay out data entry fields that really work a lot easier for us, because now we're creating and populating 2 records with one click on one screen in one step. I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope you find lots of creative ways to use control panels. Experiment with them. They're not always the right way to enter data. I think you will find them to be a great alternative to the standard slide in, slide out user experience design of Ninox. And very often, you're going to want to use them to create that more elegant, simplified user experience and user interface. Thank you so much for joining me in this class on the Ninox Learning Channel. Make sure to join us in our next class, and if you want to download this template, go over to www.nioxus.com, Nioxus.com, log into our member portal, and you can go ahead and download the control panels template out of the templates section of the member portal, and you can copy and paste this code. You can use this, or you maybe could even download it and go back and watch this video again and follow along as we walk through the creation of control panels. Thank you for being part of the Ninox community. Thank you for supporting everything we do here at Nioxus, and thank you for joining me in this class. I'll see you next week in the classroom. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, everybody.